So we're fortunate today to be joined by Aaron Bali, one of our founders and the CEO of Carbon Health. And Aaron, let's see, we met originally 5.5 years ago. And you walked in here, you were introduced to me by our mutual friend, Adeo Rese. And what I knew about you at the time was that you were known to be one of the best product designers in the Valley. And you were tackling big problems. And I know your inclusion for the masses is kind of a recurring theme of the businesses you were starting. At the time, it was Udemy, at your earlier one, and you were starting Carbon Health, and we were talking about how you were going to redo healthcare and really make it much more of an elegant system for patients, for administrators, for physicians. And I want to talk about all that. We were lucky enough to be a seed investor at the time. It's been an incredible time watching the company evolve and watching your team develop and the software develop further. And we're going to get into all that. But before we do, your story is just remarkable. It's one of those founder stories that is every time I learn more about it, it just blows my mind. And I would love for you to just take a few minutes and go way back. You grew up in a literally a small village in Turkey, and you learned so much on your own. And your mom was a teacher, teaching 5 grades at once in one classroom. And I would love to hear more about that. Can you take us back for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so I was born in the small village in southeast part of Turkey, and it was soon after the 1980 coup. So it was the region was both suffering from both like economic problems, but also just like kind of state oppression. So because of those two things, no teachers or doctors would want to go work in that region. They would actually force people. So my mom is a teacher, so and she was idealist. She wanted to move back to our that region so that because there were really no other teachers. So she was in a one-room schoolhouse. She would rotate between like 5 grades. She would also work on the maintenance of the school. She would also go knock the doors to kind of get more people to send their daughters to school. So because in that region also that was a big problem. So I mean, in a way, like I grew up in this region which was having a lot of challenges, but I would say it was still like a progressive region who really cared about education. And actually, one of the things that has been very inspiring for me is seeing all the kids in this small village walking miles every day to school and still like not wanting to miss like one day. So I grew up there, and I mean, sometimes people call our generation the millennials, like the generation that grew up with internet. But in reality, I remember first time we had telephone. I remember first time we had water in the houses, clean water. I remember the like sewer system coming in. So all those like things actually happened in my time. And I actually remember the first time one of my distant cousins was in the capital in Turkey, and he had used this thing called computers. He would just come tell me about computers for like hours, and I would just like listen to this thing that I had never seen before. So like before I have ever seen computers, I was a computer fan. So he would tell me about programming and modeling and operating systems, and I would just like stay there listening to it. So that was really the kind of the environment. But I think for me the ticket outside that region was really getting involved in getting really interested in mathematics and chess. So origins was chess.
How did you do that? Did you have internet access at that point or not?
No internet access.
So this was before. Okay.
I started playing chess because my father had made chess pieces from carving wood for me. So he had learned from somebody else. He went to service med. So he taught me how to play chess when I was, I think, 4 years old. So in my early ages, I was a big chess fan, just walking around, just going everywhere trying to find chess opponents. And then later on, again, mathematics was another interest. And I think this all changed because my older sister was going to college, and my parents bought her a used computer, and internet access came for a couple months with it. And during the summer, I realized, one, I can play chess with like computers and with other people on internet. That actually became a big unlock for my kind of chess skills. But then, more importantly, I started getting into more mathematics because I was really feeling frustrated that I just there was really no resource for me to just improve my math skills. So I found those IRC channels where people were discussing different mathematics problems.
Yeah.
I found out about international math Olympiads and all the kind of more complex, like harder problems they were solving going on. So I started really playing with problems online as a way to kind of learn about mathematics. And long story short, I ended up winning gold medal in Turkey's national math Olympiads and silver medal in international math Olympiads.
How old were you when you won your first medal?
I think I was like 15 years old.
Wow.
But I skipped 3 years of school, so it was essentially it was last year of high school. And yeah, it was like for me, like the biggest difference was like there had been no person from the eastern part of Turkey who had ever actually been in the team before. So, but for me, like when you had internet access, all of a sudden, like I mean, it doesn't equal the playing field completely, but it does give you a kind of chance to catch up.
Yep.
Right? So
your parents at the time, seeing you progress like this and learning on your own online, and then seeing you compete and win in an Olympiad, a mathematics Olympiad, they must have been, first of all, a little bit blown away, and second of all, wondering what to do with you. Yeah. Where do you go from here?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, like the expectations were not very high. So like they were not just really pushing me to compete. I would pretty much everything I did, like I did because I was personally competitive and wanted to do those things. Yeah. So, and yeah, there was really not much to go. I was essentially drawing my own destiny. But I was already like at that age, I was very well known in my whole city. It wasn't just my parents. It was like pretty much the entire city knew who I am, and like I was because step by step competing in these areas, and still I think I would say I'm probably relatively well known in my hometown. So they knew that like I was gonna do something more, but they just didn't know what direction I should be going. So I was really exploring on my own.
And did you know at that point that you had entrepreneurial DNA? Did you identify that as, someday I'm going to start companies, or were you just like learning and just wanted to learn more?
So I don't think I understood my entrepreneurial DNA until second year in college, and I'll tell the story exactly the moment I realized it. So because in high school I was expected to be a math professor. That was the expected pathway. I actually competed in international math Olympiads, which was in the United States. So I came here in 2000 where. And after that, like a lot of our classmates went to, my team members came to United States to go to college. But I was too young at that point, like just 15 years old. And my sisters were going to college in Turkey, so I wanted to kind of stay with them in Turkey. And I started the first year in college. I studied computer science and mathematics as double majors. And I remember, like, I did not have a personal kind of portable computer back in that day, so I was pretty much always in universities' labs to play with computers.
This was at the Middle East Technical
University.
Which is where?
Which is in the capital of Turkey, Ankara.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. So we did not have portable computers; they were way too expensive back then. So I was always in some computer lab in the college. Yep. So and when we were gonna go for internships over the summer, so we would not be able to listen to the music because again, they required to have your own computer. So I built a browser-based music player in 2001. So that was essentially that was the time when Napster was very popular. So I just essentially had this idea that programming browsers were going to be good enough one day so that you can actually build apps on top of it. So I made something which looked almost exactly like Winamp. So if you remember that. Yeah. So, and I had to build every component to be able to build an application from scratch because it wasn't a common concept to build browser-based rich applications. Yeah. So, but when I built that thing and all of the students started using it, and then it was used so much that it was consuming 3/4 of the university's bandwidth. So the network admins shut it down. But I really enjoyed like building that kind of product and seeing people use it.
See, that's the time to go raise money, right when that happens.
Yeah. Except like for 3 more years. I mean, I loved building things. I had no idea there's like Google and like Facebook type of stuff are real businesses. I thought they were somebody's like projects. So like between the time I realized I like building things to understanding these are real businesses was at least 4 more years. So I think 2005 is when I can realize, oh, there's something called Silicon Valley. People come here, these projects actually become real businesses, and that's when like I got the kind of bug to wanting to build a more like a global company.
And when did you move to the U.S.? What year?
I moved formally in 2009.
2009. So you come here.
Yeah.
You have an accent.
Yep.
You're starting a company, which means raising money and hiring people and getting it all going.
Yeah.
And you have a theme of you had access to education where others didn't when you grew up, and you wanted to bring access to the masses. How did you get it going? How did you first get Udemy, your first company, going?
Yes. So I had started Udemy in Turkey first, actually, in 2007. That didn't work. We shut it down. It took me really 2-3 years to be able to migrate to Silicon Valley. Yeah. So I lost the H1 lottery. So it was a very long process there. And I found out about this incubator called Founders Institute. So at that time, for me to come to the United States, I had to work a full-time job. So most incubators would not allow you, accept you if you're not able to quit. So Founders Institute was the first one which accepted you to just like work somewhere else but still attend.
I mean, really, your case study is why Founders Institute exists. It's perfect for it.
I mean, I think I joined the very first class of the Founders Institute. So I joined there. So I remember showing Adeo like what we had built. I said, here's the thing I want to do. So, and it failed once, but Adeo immediately loved the business. The idea of bringing all the tools together so that you can run a viable online course was very interesting. But Adeo he is also very sometimes brutal with his feedback, which I like about him. Yeah. So he said, look, with his accent, you're not going to be able to raise money. You're not going to be able to get your first instructors. You need to find a business partner to to work together. So because you can focus on the product and technology, and so that was his advice, and I took the advice, and it ended up becoming really a good plan. So we partnered with Gagan Biani, and together we launched the company and our third co-founder Oktay. Yeah,
I mean the Udemy story is amazing. Now you just filed your S1, so we're not going to talk anymore about Udemy.
Yes,
you're not really allowed to right now.
Yeah.
I want to jump into a few years later when you start thinking about the healthcare industry. And it's a complicated industry with some things work well, a lot of things don't, and there's not a whole lot of great software in it. What were you thinking? Why did you think that industry was the next one to attack to bring easy access to healthcare and affordable healthcare, hopefully, to the masses? Like walk me through your mindset.
Yeah, so my first interest in healthcare started in 2013, when my mom had a completely unexplained stroke, and I had to take 3 months off Udemy, went back to Turkey, and my sister's a physician, so we were going from one doctor to another to understand what was happening. So there's no sad story here. So she eventually, one of the neurologists diagnosed as a disease called neuropsychosis, which is very rare. But in that process, I was looking at like all the exports from different health systems, the printed papers. We had 2,000-3,000 pages of documents. It was a really slow process to get advice from multiple physicians. So, and my sister was running the whole show, but I was kind of observing everything. And I said like, okay, it's crazy to me that every physician looks at the medical records the same way. They were looking at every page, taking writing 2 words in their notebook, and they were essentially making a chronology of the problem. And each one of them worked the same way, but none of the existing software systems work that way. So just my first observation was, like these tools that they have to use is definitely not designed for the physicians. And physicians being such a critical resource, I said like someone should build a better system. And again, at this point, I'm still the CEO of a very fast growth company. I made a bunch of sketches about how I would design a health record system if I was doing healthcare. And I did nothing with it. It was just a couple of sketches I made back in 2013, came back to United States and went back to Udemy. But a couple of years later, like this whole idea kind of kept bubbling up in my head. Like these physicians are so inefficient to utilize. And the second thing I was observing, which really disappointed me, was that there were all these technology companies in healthcare space, but they were all going after Google employees. Essentially, everybody wanted to become a healthcare provider for high-end, affluent young people, and nobody was really building differentiated healthcare for an average teacher, average retail employee in this country. Really, like average American had zero differentiated healthcare option. And I kind of like over a Christmas break, I like most of my things started the same way. I started sketching out ideas without thinking about the business. So I just say like, what's the healthcare experience I want for myself as a patient? And I made 200 sketches.
Yeah.
So about how do I want to onboard, book my appointments, get my care plans, follow up with the doctor. So I just sketched them out. And at that point, like we had also, like I had a small team of a couple of physician, engineers, designers, like almost like a work group that was gonna think about healthcare.
Yeah.
So I brought the physician-facing idea about like better tooling, and then I tried to sketch the patient experience idea and just brought it together. And it became clear to me that the experience I want for myself, right, and my children, is actually not something that has to be expensive. I said like all this great customer experience could be done without increasing operating costs. If anything, this could actually reduce the cost of the care delivery. So, and the idea that like you can reinvent the entire technology stack to help make healthcare both 10 times better, but also cost lower so that it can be accessible to the entire population. Like that actually, when it clicked, it got me really excited. So originally we were not planning to own all the clinics and
Yeah, so start there. So you built the first software, the first version of this.
Yeah.
And it looked great from the patient's perspective. It looked great from the physician's, from the administrator's perspective. And you then had a go-to-market plan.
Yes.
And this has evolved over time. But talk about your initial go-to-market plan.
Yeah, exactly. This is
what we funded, by the way.
This is fun to talk with you because so when look, the reality is like I knew a couple broken pieces in the healthcare equation, which is patient experience, provider efficiency, right? So. But I did not know about healthcare enough to honestly like have a viable business model in mind.
Yeah.
So my first take was, okay, if you build an amazing software platform, it should be possible to partner with existing healthcare providers, modernize their systems, make them more efficient. And I had this vague idea about connecting thousands of independent practices under one software platform and also make it look like a health system. So I was almost trying to create the world's largest hospital system by connecting independent practices with the same software. That was the original idea. But before we even started that, we had to build a viable healthcare delivery platform. And I have some very specific opinions about how to do things. So I believe the only way to build something which is like truly great is having original insights about the problem you're trying to solve. So I had this crazy idea to open an actual primary care clinic inside the office so that we can better understand how care delivery should work.
It was your laboratory.
It was our laboratory. Essentially, we started providing primary care inside our office. And I knew that all the legacy systems were horrible. So not only I did not want to use them long term, but also I did not even want our team to be influenced by their historical decision making. So I made it forbidden to even look at other EHRs. And I said, we will have patients, we have our providers. We are going to figure out how things should work from the first principles. Truly, like how do patients onboard, schedule appointments, get their care plans. Really, we approach all the problems from the first principles. And really, there were two requirements. In the patient side, everything had to be mobile first, just like any other service industry. And in the provider side, the requirement was that providers cannot do anything that doesn't require hardcore medical decision making. So we just really designed things from first principles, and we started selling to a couple of small practices, and it was going fine. But as you might remember, at one point we realized the true magic would only work out if we actually owned the entire service delivery chain. So I think after a lot of deliberation, we decided to become more vertically integrated.
So why don't you define Omnicare? Okay, because it's kind of a new term. And I just want everyone to really understand what it means, because that's at the heart of what Carbon Health is building.
Yes. So from day one, we knew that if you really want to improve healthcare, it cannot be purely virtual. I mean, telemedicine is fine and nice, but it's just not, I didn't think it was going to replace people's primary like care delivery. So we had this idea to deeply integrate services, which is both clinical care and also virtual care, with software we had built that can really kind of connects everything, right? We built the entire technology platform from the ground up with like a single piece of software. And then also even hardware. Even from the early days, I had this idea of like one day Carbon is gonna take everything from clinic software, building custom hardware, integrated with existing hardware solutions to build a really kind of modern healthcare experience. And the reality is like these things independently exist. Yeah. There are consumer applications with devices. There are telemedicine companies. There are urgent care clinics. There are primary care clinics. Yeah. But the problem is when these are completely disjointed, we put all the burden on the patient to navigate different systems. And all the medical records are scattered. So our idea was you combine this so tightly that you remove the patient friction as much as possible. Essentially, we want to really fix the broken handles in the system by just taking it from virtual to clinic, clinic to devices, device data back to application, application feeding back to the provider. So tight integrating all of those things is this idea that we have been calling omnichannel healthcare. Mm-hmm.
So our thesis at the time when we first invested was, here's Aaron, who's an amazing founder.
Yep.
Here's a thesis which makes tons of sense of how you want to improve the healthcare system for all sides. Yep. Here's a great initial take at the software. And our bet was that you would innovate along the way. And that you would figure out what is doable, what's not doable, what's the best place, what's the best way to actually get this done, to actually execute this, and the best team to do it. So you started with one unit, and you learned a lot.
Yes.
And you started making adjustments. And at this point, you're adding units all the time, both through acquisition and through partnerships and through building.
Yep.
So walk me through a little bit that evolution and where Carbon is today.
Yes. So actually, I remember there's like one specific conversation I had with you back in the day. So when you saw the first sketches, first demo of the customer experience, you had this comment, which is, this looks amazing, but like it almost feels too good to be true, was your comment, right? So, and I actually I took a strong mental note because it was really kind of hard to understand why this does not exist already, right? So, and the only way to see it would be like actually trying to deliver it. So from early days, I was always very somewhat like skeptical about unit economics. Essentially, I just wanted to make sure not only this customer experience was viable, but also it could be done within the constraints of existing healthcare spending. Yep. So I was like, I never assumed that was given. So we really took our time before we scaled the company. So we had one clinic for the first 2.5 years where we were just writing software. And then we met this urgent care owner in San Francisco named Caesar. So he had the right intent. He was very technology centric. He wanted to have really great patient experience, but he was not a builder. So when he saw our first platform, his like eyes widened. He was like, I can tell that you guys have a clinic inside your office. Like you have captured nuances that even electronic health record companies which have been around for 40 years still don't understand, right? So he immediately understood that like we understood care delivery like deeply. And he took a huge risk and decided to have all of his clinics transition to Carbon software. So really the next 1.5 years, we just focused on that one customer, right? So we deployed our software platform after 9 months. At that point, we also had to build the billing system and operations, customer support, because that was like a sizable operation with, I think, 60,000 patients back in the day. So we focused on really nailing that one implementation, and which we did, to everybody's surprise. Yeah. And 3 months after we did that first deployment, I was looking at the data. And look, a lot of things were not very far from being optimal at that point. So it's still early stages of a company. So it was year 3, I guess. But I looked at a couple data points. One, the moment we deployed our software platform to those clinics, all of the Yelp reviews and Google reviews of the clinic became more about the application than the clinical service. That was very kind of one just anecdotal evidence. Yeah. But the more quantified evidence was, I had downloaded the last 3 years of retention data for those clinics patients, and I could like I had drawn cohort charts for like really 12 quarters of patients. And the first quarter we deployed our platform, the retention curve changed so drastically. So people are far more likely to come. It's almost like 2-3 times more likely to come back if they like after we deployed our platform.
That is the core KPI of the company, right? I mean, that's patient retention.
Exactly, patient retention, because look, it's a very competitive industry. I mean, both primary care and urgent care, especially in the Bay Area, is very competitive, right? So people have a lot of options. You're not necessarily going to be the closest clinic to them all the time. You're not going to be the preferred, the cheapest. So my thesis was that if our customer experience is actually better, it should be visible as increased retention. And when I saw the retention increase so much, like way beyond what I was originally thinking, I just had the thought that, okay, we should just own these clinics. It just doesn't make sense for us to be a pure software provider. So I talked to Caesar and I offered to kind of merge the two companies and make it a completely vertically integrated healthcare provider. So he just on the spot, he said like, he was shy about asking about it, but he actually wanted to do the same thing. So he knew that.
Smart man.
Yeah, very smart man. It was very risky move.
Yes.
I sometimes joke that he was the biggest visionary because he invested his entire net worth on Carbon stock. But
I mean, in a way, he's kind of a co-founder of the current vision of Carbon. I mean, he helped you get that strategy going.
Exactly. No, we actually formally gave him a co-founder title because
that's great.
He practically, his vision and Carbon's vision kind of collided. Yeah. And we just said, okay, really, if you want to disrupt primary care broadly, we just need to tightly integrate technology, operations, and also the people culture. Yep. So because I had no idea how to run clinics. Like we were just good software developers, but then they had a decent idea about clinical operation, customer experience, so the combined teams became just a really strong team. And since then, we also brought more of a professional team with the operations, finance, and legal, and real estate development. So Carbon has probably one of the largest exec teams in Silicon Valley, but the marriage of these two different companies really kind of built Carbon, as you know. It's really 2018 is when we formally became Carbon as people know it today.
How do you make the decision as you're going across the country now and you're opening up a lot of clinics? Yeah. And these are such well-run things. How do you make the decision on whether to build or buy?
It's a good question. So we open 2 clinics per week these days. Okay. So the reality is we are trying to buy and build as many clinics as we want, right? So there's a limit on how many clinics we can build because we are in certain number of cities where we have insurance contracts, and there's certain amount of real estate available. So it is essentially we build as many as we can practically. So that's a little bit like build, and we are kind of hitting the limits. Yeah. The buy is actually a different subject because there are a ton of clinics you can buy today. To me, the most critical thing is there are a lot of physician-owned practices around the country, where the team has the exact same vision we have. They want to really provide extremely patient-centered care. They want to make things affordable, but they also do not have venture capital, so they have to make the unit economics work. So whenever we see teams that feel like, oh, these people could work at Carbon, we then try to buy the company, buy the clinic. Essentially, it's actually not like a huge financial exercise. It's not about particular some strategic value, and even though that sometimes exists, at the end of the day, if you feel like there's a team of providers that we would hire to Carbon today, we buy their clinic, and we don't even mind rebuilding the clinic from ground up. So it's really because of when we buy the clinic, because Carbon is so vertically integrated, we're not really transitioning their existing business to Carbon. Right. We're just really taking the physical location, we're taking the team, and we're deploying Carbon, which takes only 4 to 6 weeks, including all the clinical training, and they turn into Carbon Health clinics.
So it seems like as long as there's a cultural fit with the team, it's math. Yeah. It comes back down to math. It's an arbitrage experience. It's a chance to take a great team and location and just redo their business. And you have enough data points from all the other clinics you've opened. At that point what's going to happen, how patients are going to react, how the physicians are going to react.
Yeah. Exactly. Look, I think there are thousands of clinics. Because here, what we have seen is most doctors, especially, and like people who work in the clinical world, like they have the right intent. Like sometimes people think maybe providers are being evil, and that's part of the problem. But the reality is like most people who work in healthcare delivery are really good people. Right? They have the right culture, the right mindset. It's just that healthcare services is the single most complex, operationally complicated service industry. And the tooling they had is 15 years behind the rest of like any other industry. So what they're doing is really just kind of, we build the modern tooling and we have the right kind of company culture to host these people who wanted to do exactly what Carbon Health wants to do.
Yeah.
Like even our vision about using hardware, software, deeply integrating the clinical care, that's not very unique to Carbon. Honestly, like we just bought a chain in New Jersey where the physician owner has been dreaming about this for 30 years now.
Yeah.
So it's just like not easy for
them
them
to do.
It's hard to do. So like they like what we say is exactly what they've been thinking. I mean, what we say feels new to sometimes investors, but it's actually not new to physicians. That's what they've been dreaming about for like forever.
It all starts with the product.
Yep.
You've made a product that's, from my perspective as a patient, simple, it's elegant, very easy to use, it works well. So you're already blowing me away in terms of what you've done so far. Talk to me about, and this is what we should finish with, but talk to me about 5 years from now and 10 years from now.
Yes.
As Carbon keeps evolving, what does it look like? How do you, how does it continue to innovate and really change the industry?
Yeah. Look, I think so far what we have built is really just, I'll say, like utility, because there's so much complex intricacies in healthcare delivery. We just had to build the infrastructure. We had to build integration with insurance companies, the pharmacies, labs, imaging centers, other health systems. So we built really all the railroads so far, and we built a simple, clean, like application layer on top of it. But honestly, the real fun is just starting now. So what we've done is really just we finally digitized the care delivery concept. So what you do on top of it is, first of all, you think about providing a lot more longitudinal proactive care. So this is the place where we bought one company 6 months ago, which integrates continuous glucose monitoring sensors into both diabetes care, but also we are now experimenting it for people with pre-diabetes risk. Right? So that was one. We bought another company which is very specialized on remote patient monitoring for preventing stroke, heart attacks, hypertension-related problems. So essentially, we're building a very big roster of these hardware capabilities. The goal is to be like a continuous part of somebody's care. So not just like when they need care, but also just proactively tell. And I think this is the place where one of the metrics that blow my mind is it takes roughly 17 years for innovation in healthcare to really hit mass market. But we want to become the healthcare provider which is always in the bleeding edge of what's possible, both in technology side and also clinical side. So lesser known fact, like we actually, Carbon Health does a lot of clinical studies because we want to know what's happening, what's going to become possible 5 years later. So, and we want to be able to operationalize it. So essentially in 4 or 5 years, Carbon Health will become what I can sometimes joke as the technology-enabled John Hopkins.
You know, which reminds me that your reaction ability as a company, because of taking that stance, was exhibited over the last couple of years with COVID. And it was pretty amazing to see that how quickly Carbon got into the testing business, vaccinations, scheduling, helping everybody with their urgent needs here, but also some massive projects. Like for instance, you ran the entire testing program at Dodger Stadium, which was where all of LA went to get tested.
Vaccinated, but yes. So it was, we vaccinated 1.5 million people in LA. We did 1.4 million tests in different areas. Honestly, those are like moments where we were healthcare providers and our communities needed us to do exactly that. They weren't necessarily kind of long-term commercial ideas, but that said, it actually helped the company because I think we built a very strong brand with our very effective COVID response. So because we showed that if you tightly integrate software, services, and the company culture is very kind of pro-innovation, moving fast to help people. then I think you can just really do a much better job than really any other legacy systems. So
For me, it was also just a stress test of
Yeah.
how well the software works in such large numbers
yes,
when there's urgency.
yep. No, it was definitely a stress test because
Yeah.
I think we were serving like a couple hundred patients in like per day in 19,
Yeah.
and then 2000 we had maybe 1,000,
Yeah.
and then like we went to like from 1,000 to 2,000 over like in a month, and then
Yeah.
we started vaccinating 25,000 people per day. So it just was
Seems
like such a
incredible.
fast scale.
Yeah.
So I mean, especially vaccination was like such a high volume like need that the fact that we were able to do this without blowing up the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that was actually like a really good stress test because like even right now our volume is lower than
Yeah.
like the whole like vaccinating 1.5 million people in 2 months. Like that was definitely that was a strong. I mean that really forced us to like increase the scalability of the system. Like when
Yeah.
10,000 people are simultaneously booking appointments, it's a different situation.
Yeah, I mean, you helped accomplish what wasn't doable prior to Carbon Health, and
Yeah.
it was amazing to see. Now, you just closed, just meeting a few months ago, closed a new financing. You raised $350 million, led by Blackstone, with a lot of other great investors participating. And so you now have the resources to
Yes.
really take this far and wide. And I know you were moving at 120 miles an hour before then.
Yep.
Are you sleeping at all these days?
No, I'm sleeping. I think we have the benefit of having a very strong team.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I maybe did very specifically was building a big and really established team. For
Yeah.
like I think we have probably, I think subjectively by far the best executive team among
Yeah.
the entire healthcare space.
Yeah.
So that's why I can sleep comfortably because I think we have been scaling very fast. We were number 2 on Inc. magazine's fastest growing private companies list. But also like we planned all of those things. It doesn't feel chaotic at all. So right now we are opening 2 clinics per week, which again will take us to become a nationwide healthcare provider very fast.
Yeah.
And then I think this omnichannel healthcare concept, the hardware, the software, the deep integration, that's the area where like even when we work for 10 years, it will still feel like we can make it even better. So, but at least we are kind of starting the investment very heavily. And lastly, I think all those things together will make healthcare more affordable to the entire population, entire country. So that keeps us fired.
Well, I can tell you from the board meetings, the firepower exhibited by your executive team is impressive to say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a great group that works really well together, and you can see it in what you guys are accomplishing right now.
Yeah.
I will tell you on behalf of my partners at Javelin, it is an honor to be a part of this, just as an amazing startup, but also because you guys are saving tons of lives. You're making lives better. You're making the whole system better. You're actually getting it done, and just to see the evolution of this, we knew you were an amazing entrepreneur to begin with, but man, you have exceeded all expectations, and I'm just really proud of the company.
Yep.
So thank you for coming in and having this talk with me today. I'm sure people will love watching this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jad. So, and I think honestly, the way I'm looking at this is, I just kickstarted a bunch of people who had the same dream in different places, whether they're physicians, engineers, work in healthcare, really together. So I think we all enjoy working at Carbon.
You can tell. Well, thank you, Aaron. Much appreciated.